Arts, lifestyle. SNS Online.
Hello and welcome to SNS Online. Now, I'm not entirely sure where we start with today's special guest. So many creative and intellectual boxes ticked off, but you'll be forgiven for thinking she'll soon be revving up to rewrite the laws of quantum mechanics. Hey, perhaps she has, dear readers. As well as being currently employed as Knowledge Exchange Fellow at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, my fabulous guest, who is currently draped decoratively on the SNS chaise longue, is also a professional actor, a member of the Magic Circle, a publisher of a number of acclaimed works on Suffrage Theatre, a public speaker, and occasional Radio 4 presenter. I know. And on top of all that, her incredibly successful cabaret artiste alter ego, Ada Campe, who has been described as a unique blend of comedy, magic, regret, and shouting. Awards have been arriving thick and fast for both her onstage persona and her research work. Sandy Toksvig has described her as a genius. Oh, and annoyingly, she's also really nice. Ladies and gentlemen, trans folk and all they thems, we are extremely proud to introduce the one, the only, the effervescent, I never knew she wasn't, Dr. Naomi Paxton.
Thank you so much. That's a terrifying but awesome introduction. Thank you.
It's sort of true, though, isn't it? I mean, you really have your fingers in lots of different pies, but you seem to sort of excel in all of them.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Yes, it wasn't deliberate. I think when it's all bunched up together, it sounds more impressive. When it's all spread out like it normally is, it sort of seems a bit more hustly and chaotic. But I like the bunched up version. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Just to say, we don't get many doctors on the show. In fact, we have another show called Corona Chronicles where we have loads of doctors on. But for SNS, I think we've had a dame, a lord, a fair few queens, it's got to be said. But I believe this actually might be a first. So congratulations there.
Thank you very much. It's an honour. It's an honour.
Just now to start with, lockdown, corona, let's get it out of the way. Obviously, you have somewhat stifled creative souls like yourself. How tough has your year been?
Well, I mean, I do sort of tend to play Pollyanna generally. I think looking around at how tough the year could have been, or how other people's has been, I actually feel really, really glad. It's been, I mean, yes, it's been tricky, but it's been fine, and sort of managed, and elderly relatives have survived, and people have been sensible, and all that kind of stuff. We moved house during lockdown, which was a mission, but actually was quite a good thing, because distraction in terms of DIY and painting and all that sort of stuff made it all feel a little less sort of stuck at home-ish than it could have done before. But yes, it's been tricky, but I feel very glad that it hasn't been trickier, is my response to that.
Okay, let's roll back those years to your early days. What were your hopes and dreams when you were very young, and do they tally with the woman that you've become?
My younger self would be both thrilled and horrified at what I do now. I think when I was very young, I wanted to be a farrier.
Okay, what's that then?
Like a blacksmith, shoeing horses.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I'm viciously allergic to all animals, especially horses. So that was never going to happen. Oh. So my next ambition was to be a performer, was to be an actor, and I wanted to do that from when I was about 7, and that was my focus, and I didn't really want to do anything else apart from that. So yes, the theatre was I caught the bug quite early.
So in terms of your early days with the acting, when you started out, what sort of roles did you do? I mean, have I seen you in anything?
I was theatre and radio, actually, is what I did.
Okay.
So I was in the West End with Shadowlands, the play about C.S. Lewis.
Yes, of course.
In 2007-8, which is kind of when I found out about Suffrage Theatre. I had a look that was quite quirky, and I had my hair cut very short and got work, and then when I went to drama school, I grew my hair long and then didn't get any work, and then cut it off again and got work. So it was something about having a quirky look. So I did odd things actually. So I was on tour for 2 years with the UK tour of the Vagina Monologues, which was really interesting.
Fantastic.
Understudying celebrities up and down the country, and on tour with various other things, and that was really fun. Got to go to Hong Kong with the show and do stuff, but I didn't have that kind of linear sort of young juvenile. I was the sort of quirky physical theatre, face moves too much.
Not the Jubilee then.
Yeah, no, I was never going to be that. But I really enjoyed actually the quirky roles I got stretched me much more as a performer, because they were much more about how I felt and how I could act rather than how I looked. So it was that sort of double-edged sword really of not getting roles that you might look good for, but also getting roles that are actually quite challenging and that you can bring an individual spin to, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, character parts, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Actually, young character.
I mean, I was always just a spear holder at the back of the stage if I did anything. But
no, I had my first ever paid. I have not put this on my CV because I was working in front of house at the Old Vic when I was at university, so it was probably about 98, and I got David Suchet was playing Salieri in Amadeus at the time, and I got paid £5 a night to go on in a big cloak and a mask behind David Suchet and pause and freeze. Freeze during one of the moments and just like listen to his voice bounce off the dress circle. That felt very cool as a starry-eyed drama student to be paid to go on in the Peter Hall Company, but I never put it on my Spotlight CV.
That's fantastic. Oh, I wish I saw that. So your sort of day job, as it were, is research fellow. So that sounds very strokey beardy. I mean, are you teaching? Are you? And it's for the Central School of Speech and Drama.
Yeah, so I'm actually Knowledge Exchange Fellow, which sounds even more puzzling.
Right.
At Central School of Speech and Drama. Yes, so I don't teach modules. I do kind of workshops and one-on-one sessions, mostly about things around public engagement and knowledge exchange. I'm currently seconded to Parliament. I'm a parliamentary academic fellow working on a project there called IPEN, which is the International Parliament Exchange Network. So really looking at how Parliament... No, that's a lie. It's not called that. The International Parliament Engagement Network.
Okay.
Should I do that again?
No, it's funnier getting it wrong, really.
Okay.
Oh, no, you can leave it. I don't mind. Okay. You say it again if you want.
I'm in trouble. The International Parliament Engagement Network, which is really interesting, and looking at how parliaments sort of engage with the public around the world. So my job at Central is partly sort of being me and doing what I do, partly doing this IPEN, and also writing funding applications. I had a funding a couple of applications come through over the past couple of years to do events. So it's a funny, there isn't really a career path for what I'm doing, right. But it does allow me to be me in it, which is great. And I really enjoy being at Central. It's a really unique space. It's, it's a conservatoire, but it's also, it's a really strong research side. And I went to drama school, and I really love being back in an environment that's so closely linked to the industry. It's very different from a university drama department.
Yes, of course. So then we segue into your research with suffragettes. What particularly drew you to that time and lead you to want to investigate it so forensically?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's really nerdy. I think because when I hadn't been acting, my out of work jobs, my resting jobs were dressing on West End shows and working in box office and on stage door in West End theatres. So I do know the West End very well, and I'd known a number of those venues over the years. And I think when I first discovered that there was such a thing as Suffrage Theatre, I'd never done the suffragettes at school, so I didn't really have an appreciation of that time. I did the Tudors, and then I changed schools and did the Tudors again. So that kind of early 20th century was really new to me. And then I just loved the fact that there was all this activism in the theatre, that there were these plays. And then when I started to do the research, all the streets, the theatres they were talking about in London, I knew, and it all felt so close, and I could picture it there. It didn't, I mean, obviously it's in the past, but the liveness of having the play texts, the liveness of many of the issues they were talking about, and then the liveness of those buildings that many of which I knew intimately, just really brought it to life for me, and I think I caught it then.
So let's talk about some of your research work with suffragettes. I'm looking at your book now, Stage Rights, the Actresses Franchise League, Activism and Politics, 1908 to 258. It's so forensically detailed, and I would imagine it would be great for schools and colleges as well as just a cracking read.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. If you say that again, I'll happily clip that and put that on my website.
I'll say it as many times as you want.
Yeah, well, I think it's just thank you so much I'm really glad you found it interesting. And yeah, there is a lot of detail in it, but I think that's kind of the point. You want to bring it to life, and I think you're sort of battling through what people expect it to be, which is a sort of worthy if dull collection of occasional plays done by well-meaning posh women. Like, it wasn't like that at all. No. It was much more dynamic and much more fluid and much more challenging to us now as sort of people within and within industry, but also audiences. So yeah, I would hope that it would. At least I know it's available. My whole reason for doing the PhD was really to make a contribution to the field and make it easier for people who wanted to research. After give them some leads, some of the leads that I got. So yeah, hopefully it's a stepping stone towards more research.
Just to say, this is our second show about the suffragettes. We also interviewed Diane Atkinson, which I don't know if you know her,
yes,
who was lovely,
course, yeah.
And she'd written a big bumper book about like 100 amazing women. So yeah, I mean, I
have
find
it on my bookshelf. Yes,
I find it so interesting. So as I said, this is a very detailed book about suffragettes with particular focus on performance artists. So very interesting, as one would generally imagine the field of research was just about the generic struggle, but there's lots to talk about here.
What's interesting to me, so for example, Diane Atkinson researches the WSPU, the suffragettes, the Women's Social and Political Union, and very much focuses on them as a militant organisation. What's interesting for me, and has been really interesting as a researcher, and also since doing my PhD, is the fact that the theatre professionals worked pretty much with everybody. That the Actresses Franchise League and other organisations like them, like the Women Writers Suffrage League, were sort of neutral in regard to tactics, and that meant they worked with the constitutional suffrage societies and the militant suffrage societies, which has meant that I've had to research all of those things and really get a sort of a wider feel of the sort of machinations and the fluidity of the suffrage campaign in the Edwardian period. And that for me is endlessly interesting, because you see parallels sort of across different societies, and you also see the way that at the time and also now, sort of we've artificially divided the suffragettes and the suffragists. And I like the fact that it gives me a wider kind of context about Edwardian culture, Edwardian society, some of the silly things, some of the quirky things, as well as some of the very serious things. So I think that's what's made it really interesting, is it is sort of the history of one organisation, but because they worked with everybody, and because the members of that organisation could be members of many other organisations, it's necessarily meant that I've had to look outside that organisation to find more information and to look at the wider influences, and that's really interesting.
And what it also struck me was how I can relate to their struggles to now in terms of fights we're still continuing in terms of the LGBTQ community around the world, where it's illegal, where you can be stoned to death, whatever. The trans rights debate, which is continuing, and it's a very emotive subject on both sides. And yes, it just seems to highlight how the struggle continues.
Yeah, I think so. And I think when we're looking at sort of historically underrepresented voices or marginalised voices in theatre, we look at our canon and how that's been created and perpetuated. And we kind of look for those gaps and look for the other people, and we look around our society and we don't see possibly, a lot of the people that we interact with daily or we see, on our stages. And now, so yes, definitely kind of out LGBTQI plus people, people from many different backgrounds, differently able people. It's really about representation and about access. Talent doesn't discriminate, people do. No. And so I kind of think about the talents and the stories and the years really and opportunities lost by excluding people for spurious reasons that have nothing to do with their talent or creativity. Absolutely. So the struggle very much continues in that way. And it actually, in a way, I found it can be useful to talk about suffrage campaigners in this context, because people sort of feel that, well, that's all done now. And in a way you can somehow, or at least initially, kind of skirt around some of the defensiveness around the lack of representation in different areas of the industry now by focusing on the historical model. And then people then say, gosh, isn't it similar? Aren't these conversations that we're still having? And particularly, a lot of the Me Too stuff that came up and thinking about the sort of women's theatre ideas, things that would still be hugely aspirational and sort of unthinkably brilliant. And conversations conversations that we were having a long time ago. So actually, there's something disheartening in realizing that it's systemic, but there's also something heartening in that there are no bad guys. This is a system, and it's in plain sight, and it's up. There are strong shoulders to stand on. It's just about trying to, show people that those shoulders exist, and these debates have been had, and we can have confidence in our feelings that maybe all is not quite right with things, systems as they are, and the way that they've excluded people.
What facts that you unearthed about the period and the women concerned that sort of came rather left field and genuinely surprised you? I mean, perhaps altering some of your early assumptions about their lives.
I was really intrigued by the sort of immersive, site-specific theatre that was going on at the period. It says, one I quote in the book, of the prison cell installations at the women's exhibition. That is something that I think is really interesting, and is really challenging.
Such a great idea as well to actually really physically see a prison. So just to explain to people, that they built these prison cells to size, as it were, in special exhibitions that the general public would go, men and women, where there were loads of stores to interact with and get quite involved. Some quite innocuous ones celebrating the art of sewing, etc., so as not to scare off the more moderate visitors. But they were blended with a number of cutting-edge displays to make you think and sort of subtly promote a more equal society. Is that about right?
Yeah, so you've got real ex-prisoners there. So even if you're feeling very disgruntled about suffrage, it'll be really hard to, not be moved by some aspect of that story. I think there's the hopping over the pond. There's this sort of American lapboard ladies, the sort of site-specific sort of protest activism that's going on the subway in New York. I love the mishmash of genres in suffrage theatre. I love the fact they don't just do all female Shakespeare. I love the fact they make new work and they do stuff, and they really put their activism onto the stage. And also one thing I think that it sort of came to me too late, really, but is having activist performers perform these plays, which really does make a difference in how they come across. When people who sort of understand them politically inherently, if not every argument, but just absolutely get the sense of why they're important, perform them, they come across so differently. So yeah, I think the kind of creativity of the movement, the fact that they were experimental but they weren't naive, and the fact that so many of the people, women and men in the theatre industry, were working sort of in tandem within the suffrage campaign, but also within the commercial industry. So they're producing work very specifically for different audiences, and that's really interesting to look at. There's a liveness to it that it just kind of comes off the page, and I go, oh, hello, yes.
And just to explain that a lot of plays were created to sell the cause, as it were, but sometimes there were some quite subtleties, so it might be for a general audience. I mean, Bernard Shaw, I think, was particularly good at doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the huge things that obviously in this period is censorship. The Lord Chamberlain's plays collection that I love looking through at the British Library is just full of that, the censor's letters. So often, I think when I first started researching this, or I was reading kind of questions about, where are the blood and gut? We want this sort of voyeuristic violence. Where are the plays about force feeding? Where are all these plays? But actually, you had to be very careful about what you wrote, and there are plays that have slightly more graphic descriptions of suffrage activism in them, and they weren't passed by the censor. So anything that mentions militancy, I mean, you could put those on, you could put them on for a private audience, but if you wanted something to be published, to be widely read and to be widely performed by the people and widely seen, you would necessarily have to be more subtle in your allusions, particularly to militancy. So it really is just a product of its environment. It's not that the writers were squeamish, it's just that there was a gatekeeper, and
yes.
they, in order to get their work, they had to work to those conditions. So it's really a broader understanding of the period. Yeah, absolutely.
Just to highlight that we had Waris Hussein on the show recently, who directed Shoulder to Shoulder, which was a massive glossy BBC production in the 70s,
yes,
all about the suffragettes, and he was actually handpicked by Verity Lambert because they worked on Doctor Who together, and they initially wanted all women to work on this, so he was considered the honorary woman in the team.
That's great. I love that series.
He did a lovely job.
Very, very lucky to be given a set of the DVDs by some Australian suffrage historians a few years ago, and absolutely,
right.
yes, it's one of those ones that people wish that would be released all the time. But they beautiful storytelling work there. And
they did repeat them on BBC Four at some point, so who knows? It might come up again. I was going to ask you actually. I was imagining you going on Mastermind with all your knowledge. You haven't ever done Mastermind, no?
I've never done Mastermind.
Well,
no.
you know what? Would you like a warm up?
Oh gosh, okay, go.
Because I have prepared a series of questions, some of which we have covered already in this chat. And I know you've just had your top-up COVID jab that you mentioned in the pre-warm-up, but you're recovering from that. But I'm sure you're going to do brilliantly, even though you're slightly woozy.
I know, I was thinking, how much can I use my jab as an excuse?
Well, absolutely. So, I'm going to get the time. Let me just put my stopwatch on. And are you psyched up for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. It can only go horribly wrong, as I always say to everybody just before it starts. Can I introduce my first contestant, please? And your name?
Naomi Paxton.
And your occupation?
Knowledge Exchange Fellow at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, University of London.
Blimey O'Reilly. Well, you have you have 2 minutes, Naomi, to talk about the Actresses Franchise League, activism and politics from 1908 to 1958, starting now. What was the monthly publication that then was published weekly from the 30th of April 1908?
Votes for Women?
Yay! What were the 3 main objectives of the Actresses Franchise League?
Education through theatre, plays, publication of suffrage plays, and working with everybody.
That'll do. Okay, that's brilliant.
Okay.
What 2 authors wrote the feminist play How the Vote Was Won in 1909?
Cicely Hamilton and Christopher St. John.
Brilliant. The AFL had very specific means of accomplishing their goals. Can you name 2?
Propaganda plays and meetings.
Yes, that'll do. Who was the very first president of the league?
I know this. It was I just had a brain fart.
Do you want to say fast?
Vaccination break.
Okay.
Who was it?
Pass. You have to say pass.
Oh no, I can't pass. This is really important.
my clock's ticking. I don't know what to do.
Oh my gosh, I can't pass it on principle.
Okay.
Okay, no. All right, pass. Go on, pass.
Okay, don't worry about it. Who wrote the play Lady Geraldine's Speech in 1909?
Beatrice Harraden.
Yay! In the 1909 WSPU Women's Exhibition, what real-world representation did they recreate to give visitors a better idea of suffrage struggle?
First Division and Second Division cell from Holloway Prison.
Yes! If I said the words time and tide, what would I be referring to?
Feminist magazine.
Yes, absolutely. On November the 1st, 1913, who spoke at the Albert Hall in support of Dublin workers who had recently gone on strike in order to promote a more humane society?
Charlotte Despard?
No, Sylvia Pankhurst.
Sorry.
Who composed March... I'll start it so I'll finish. Who composed March of the Women?
Ethel Smythe.
Correct. And at the end of that round, you scored 12 points with only 1 wrong answer and 1 pass.
I think it's Madge Kendall, isn't it?
Yeah, Dame Madge Kendall.
Yeah, I did know. I just had a brain fart.
No,
Sorry.
That's fine. That's good. Well, don't want you to get every single one right.
Yeah, you're right. I don't want to be unbearable.
Too much.
SNSOnlineshow.com, your brand new one-stop shop for all things SNS. Take a tour through our wide and diverse collection of shows and listen in to our exclusive range of in-depth interviews spanning the popular arts, featuring actors, writers, journalists, stand-up comedians, musicians and more. You can also enjoy our shorter bite-sized series covering vibrant new theatre, television and book releases. And with our arts lifestyle remit, you get to explore issue-based topics, including health, mental health, women's rights around the world, and LGBTQ. Contact us with both your comments and suggestions for future guests. And don't forget to read up on our blog, regularly updated with articles and photographs. A forum where everyone is welcome to contribute. SNSonlineshow.com, your one-stop shop for all things SNS.
So, Magic Circle, you can do magic tricks, combining with cabaret and comedy and a psychic duck. Which I'm supposed to not say anything because it's spoilers, darling.
Spoilers.
Not exactly easy to get into the Magic Circle. I mean, that's incredible.
Wow, yeah, no, it's it's been good fun. I got in during lockdown, so I've not been to I've been to the clubhouse before, but I've not been to it since I've been a member. So I'm waiting to get through the doors and be allowed to go in all the secret places.
Yeah, so I mean, tell us about your love of magic. Where did that come from?
I first worked with a magician in a late night magic cabaret show at German Street Theatre, and it was sort of a husband and wife double act. But in this one, the assistant was me, the wife, and she did all the talking and the husband was silent. Right. So we did quite trad stuff. We did disappearing and we did some quite trad tricks. But because it was a late night cabaret, there was it had a sort of naughtiness to it, and we built a world around it. So I got suddenly very used to talking to the audience and being the misdirection through chatting and introducing tricks. And it sort of introduced me to a whole different world, really. Yeah.
I mean, my only two magic tricks is I used to do a card one when I had a card sticking out. This is when I was about 5 years old. I'd spread out the cards, take a card, but one would be sticking out in the middle. And every time somebody tried to take another card, I'd just keep moving the cards until they could just take the one. And then, of course, I forget what it was anyway. But there you go. Wasn't one of the suffragettes asked by some great conjurer if she would come on stage and be sawn in half, and she turned him down?
She did turn down. That was, yes, in the 1920s. He asked Christabel Pankhurst as a publicity stunt, because she'd made her own publicity stunt by saying that she was available for work in the papers. So he rather cleverly just leapt on that and used it to promote his act. I don't think she was ever. I mean, she would do a lot of things for publicity, Christabel, but I think that might have been a step too far.
Oh, I think that is so funny. Do you think your stand-up work was sort of inspired a bit from those trailblazing women of old? I mean, women in comedy is obviously much better than it used to be, but I'm presuming, did it take a while to carve a name for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a confidence thing, because obviously I've been an actor and that's very different. And also because I'm not doing straight stand-up as myself. So it's not just sort of going on and chatting about me. It's creating this other world. But when I was younger, I loved to go to the Players Theatre and see the music hall. I loved that. And I also loved going to the Comedy Store Players. I used to try and do that every week. And I loved Victoria Wood, and I loved Carol Burnett, and I loved Josie Lawrence. I loved Who Signs It Anyway. I used to watch that religiously. And I think I love that sort of the idea of playing with the audience, but also having a lot of things in your back pocket. I loved that. I kind of aspired to that knowingness. I aspired to having a load of things that one could do, but also being live in that moment. And so it was sort of beginning to script things and then sort of come off the script and play with the audience that way. So I suppose the people I really remember watching, I think, were Carol Burnett, Josie Lawrence, Victoria Wood, and then going to see live improv shows. And of course, if you go every week, you realise that there are a number of things that they have, ready to go, or there are a number of formula they have ready to go. And I loved that. I loved the glimpse into that, and I also loved the sheer honesty and sort of joy of the Players Music Hall. And I've always loved pantomime. I very much believe people when they come on stage and go, hello, my name is this and I want that, and I go, great, I'm with you, let's do it. I love that. So I think Ada's my character is a sort of mashup of those things, where she's somebody who's very theatrical, but not stuck in a story. She sort of exists in inverted commas. You could have dinner with her and chat to her, and she wouldn't have to rely on sort of 5 lines. She can function as a person. But also there's aliveness to her in the moment, so she can respond to the audience, but she's not just freestyling. There is a structure to it. And obviously the more experience you gain, then the more quips you have, or the more situations you're familiar with, although you can always be surprised. Yeah. So I think she's a mashup, really. I never wanted her to be a Victorian music hall artiste.
I mean, she's sort of a carnival. I sort of see her as a carnival figure from, I've got it written here, from an exotic continental circus from our long distant memories and possibly nightmares too.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Oh, well, there you
I'll
go.
Take that.
Yeah.
There you go. Done.
So just to say, I first saw Ada Campe in the Edinburgh Fringe. It was the 70th anniversary, and we got to chat to Ada, which was amazing. So we're hoping that we might get to chat to Ada a little bit later. I know you sort of manage her very carefully, and she comes out of the cupboard, once every so often. So if we can entice her...
She's fine. She's in the garden just picking the snails off the hollyhocks. So she'll come in whenever you want.
Right, okay. So we'll chat to her in a minute. So Ada evolving. Any telly for Ada, like a Mrs. Brown's Boys-style sitcom sort of spinning off into a Hollywood movie?
I would love that. Ada now sings, which she didn't do before lockdown, because her manager was too nervous. But now she does, which is great fun, and it's just opened up another whole world of cabaret. I'd love to do telly. I'd love her to do telly. But you just need someone. I think it's because it's quite a lot. Sometimes you just need someone to catch the imagination and think, we could make this work.
You can always set it.
I'd love to do it.
Always set it in Spain. Just change it. A bit like we did on Are You Being Served?
It's a bit warm though. I don't know. I'd rather set it somewhere chilly if there's anywhere chilly left.
Yeah, absolutely. But I could definitely see that happening.
SNS Online presents the soundtrack of your life.
Okay, my choice, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to go within the moment. And my choice is Le Jazz Hot from Victor Victoria.
Beautiful. Let's hear it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the nightclub is proud to present the one and only Victoria!
About 20 years ago, way down in New Orleans, a group of fellas found a new kind of music, and they decided to call it jazz. No other sound has what this music has. Before they knew it, it was whizzing round the world. The world was ready for a blue kind of music, and now they play it from Steamboat Springs to La Paz. Oh, baby, won't you play me the jazz hot? Maybe, and don't ever let it end. I tell your friend it's really something to hear. I can't sit still when there's that rhythm near me. Baby, the jazz hot, maybe what's holding my soul together. Don't know whether it's morning or night, only know it's sounding right. So come on in and play me the jazz hot, baby, 'cause I love my love has.
She's a winner.
When you play me the jazz hot, baby, you're holding my soul together. Don't know whether it's morning or night, only know it sounded right. So come on in and play me the jazz hot, baby, 'cause I love my jazz hot. Love jazz hot.
The Jazz Hot from Victor Victoria and sung by the mighty Julie Andrews. You're listening to SNS Online with today's special guest, Dr. Naomi Paxton. Now, earlier we challenged Naomi to a mastermind round, but as we were left with a number of spare questions that otherwise would have gone to waste, we decided to complete her test and see if she has any post-jab brain farts with round 2. Name the 1913 play about a fictional prime minister who sends his daughters out under assumed names.
10 Clowning Street.
Yeah, and who wrote 10 Clowning Street?
Una Dugdale.
No, it's Joan Dugdale, but that'll do.
Joan Dugdale,
I'll let you off.
sorry.
I'll let you off.
Joan Dugdale.
What was the name of the anti-suffrage play, an absurdist fantasy depicting what life would be like if women and men traded gendered roles, that began in America in 1868? I can take one of two answers.
I don't know. I don't know. Men versus Women. The World as We Know It.
Incorrect.
Topsy-turvy.
No, The Spirit of 76 or The Coming Woman, a prophetic drama.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Name one of the two authors of that play, or perhaps not.
No, perhaps not.
Don't worry. Suffrage theatre combined familiar everyday situations with relatable characters on the stage in the style of realist theatre, influenced by the plays of who?
Ooh, well, I would take argument with this. I would probably. Are you going to say Ibsen?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Ibsen.
Nah.
We'll discuss it later. Which actress unveiled the suffragette plaque outside suffragette headquarters, Clement Inn, London, on October the 10th, 1960?
Sybil Thorndike?
Yes! Name the author of this quote: "The vote will never be won by speeches made by men on behalf of women. Every time you ask a man to appear on your platform, you confess an insufficiency of women to plead their own cause."
Christopher Pankhurst?
No, George Bernard Shaw. Shaw's play, Mrs. Warren's Profession, in 1893, focuses on Shaw's belief that the act of prostitution was not caused by moral failure, but by what?
Economics.
Yes! Also with Shaw, in Fanny's first play, Shaw takes the opportunity to poke fun at the critics, the patriarchy and the middle-class family life, whilst exposing the double standards at the heart of British society and promoting equal opportunities for women. What year was it written?
1911.
Yes! My God, that's brilliant. What was Emmeline Pankhurst's maiden name?
Goulden.
Yes! Who wrote Stage Rights and is also appearing on SNS Online today?
Naomi Paxton.
Yeah! That's brilliant. So in that round, and bear in mind some of the questions were longer, you scored a grand total of 8 points, and no official passes as such, but just to add that the anti-suffrage play The Spirit of 76 or The Coming Woman, a prophetic drama written in 1868, was written by Ariana Randolph Wormley Curtis and Daniel Sargent Curtis.
Oh, gosh.
So 8 points, but if we combine the two rounds of 8 and 12 from your previous round, that gives you a grand total of 20 points.
Not too shabby.
Yay! Brilliant. And thank you for giving you a brain workout. Excellent stuff. Very well done.
That's the dream, is having a quiz. That's very exciting. We talked in 2018 because we kept having, suffrage meetings, obviously, suffragist meetings. I said we should have like a bingo card or a loyalty card or some sort of really obscure quiz at the end of the year that only 6 people could do. And we never did in the end, but we totally should have done. And that just gave me a taste of how thrilling it would have been.
Yes, totally.
Scratch and Sniff. With Nick Randall.
So obviously, second lockdown restrictions or third or fourth, whatever, were partially lifted a while out. And I noticed that straight away on your Twitter, you were out doing them, almost like you escaped from Colditz.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, I'm so thrilled to be back out gigging, and I think I'm lucky with Ada because Ada does family shows, with kids, and she does cabaret shows, and she does comedy shows, and variety shows, and magic shows. So I'm just seizing as many opportunities as possible to gig and get out there and try new stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, this duck is the most wonderful little beastie I own. I wonder, would you help me? Do you feel connected to the duck? Yeah. Have you worked with a psychic duck before?
Never before.
What do you think of her?
She's gorgeous.
No, I'm talking to the duck.
Oh, sorry.
She has emerged. She has emerged. She has emerged. Mon Dieu. She has emerged. She has emerged. They have emerged. We have emerged. Everybody emerge. Tout le monde. One day. Au revoir.
So I believe we now have on the line Ada Campe herself, and we are very, very honoured to be speaking to you, Ada. How's it going today?
Hello, Nick. Yes, how wonderful. Hello, darling. How are you? I've not seen you for yonks.
It's been quite a tiny while, hasn't it?
It has been a while. I'm bloody snails all over my hollyhocks.
Really?
It's just a nightmare. I'm just launching snails over the roof of the shed. I'm sort of in a pre-Olympic trial. But yes, no, I'm well. Thank you. Keeping well, jammed and all that. And, getting back out there and doing gigs. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine. I'm convinced you actually come from a far distant time, and you just sort of come through a sort of a time eddy into our time occasionally to say hello, because there's this sort of feeling of yesteryear with you, and I mean it in a sort of caring, sharing way. Those carnivals of old on the continent, and the lost souls that one would encounter, I presume, and the mysteries that's therein there lie. It just sort of makes me go all goose pimply, and your acts bring some of that. Well, to me anyway.
Well, no, that's very kind. Yes, bless you. My knees feel like I've come from a long distant past. They're aging poorly. But one crashes on.
Can we talk about the elephant in the room? Or in this case, a psychic duck?
Yes, of course. Yes. I'm there. I don't have an elephant.
Right.
I haven't the space. Although if Naomi manages to get me on television, perhaps, one never knows.
So if I think of a number between 1 and 10, will the psychic duck know what I'm thinking?
It may. That's the best I can tell you, darling. Often, I have to say, the psychic duck is most successfully activated on a lighted stage. But we can give it a go. We can give it a go. If it's between 1 and 10, I imagine we'll get there eventually.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking of a number now. What does the duck say?
Duck. What number have you? 6.27.
My God, that's exactly right. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary.
Well done, Ducky. Well done, darling.
That is amazing. Listen, thank you, Ada, so much. Keep doing what you're doing and entertaining the troops. We love you so much.
Bye, Nick. Thank you, darling.
You can sort of clear your throat now.
Yes, fine.
No, Naomi, where are you?
She's gone, dear.
Oh, no.
Stuck with me. She's out there putting the snails back on my hollyhock.
Get Naomi back. Get Naomi back.
Come on, darling.
For the end.
Hello.
Oh, hello. That's brilliant. We're almost at the end of the show now, Naomi, but I would like to sell your wares, as it were.
Yeah.
By letting everybody know where we find you. What is your website?
And my website is www.naomipaxton.co.uk.
That's fabulous. Everybody needs to follow both you and Ada. Naomi, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. It's been fantastic. Ada Campe is extraordinary. All your work is extraordinary, and we love you.
Thank you so much. It's a total pleasure. Thank you for having me, and what a treat. Thank you for reading the book. That makes me so happy. I can't tell you.
Absolute pleasure. And also, you get a celebrity goodie bag when we get your details. So that should be very exciting. Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, Nick. Bye, Nick. Thank you, darling. Take care. Hope to see you in real life soon.
Love you both.
Thank you, Nick.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
When you claim me, let jazz hot, baby, you're holding my soul.